Hello and welcome to the post-legislative session for 2021. My name is Deborah Boelz. I'm the President CEO of the Little Falls Area Chamber of Commerce that proudly serves all of Morrison County. And with us today we have Senate Majority Leader Paul Gazelka and Representative Kresha, and they are fresh off of the session that gavelled out at the wee hours this morning, so if they both look a little sleepy, we will cut them some slack today. So if we'd like to start with some opening remarks from either of you.
Sure. So, well, thank you to Senator Majority Leader Paul Gazelka, and thank you for everyone being here. It was a bit of a late night, and it's just the way it goes. There's lots I could say about it, but I won't. But I will say this. So what you're going to probably hear, at least from me today, whereas in the Senate, Paul and his team his caucus were in the majority, we were in the minority. I would say that on policy things and budgetary items that came through, there's probably less than a daylight's difference between our agreements and how I would align up with where things landed. Now, what I will say is being in the House minority, and from our perspective, my perspective, there was a lot of moving parts, and we were going to get a budget done. Things were going to happen, things that were beyond our control, even as Senate and representatives. I mean, we were dealing with the COVID over the last 18 months. We were dealing with the changes in presidential. We were dealing with money that was coming from the feds fast, with a lot of uncertainty. And we're dealing with a large state budget. We're dealing with surpluses that we thought we didn't have, that we did have. So there a lot of things just happened. And in all of that, that creates, I think, a situation that we have in front of you, which is a really big budget. There's a lot out there. There's a lot that has to be done. But removing the uncertainty was one of the biggest challenges that I think our businesses, our families, and our schools faced. We just didn't know. And in every step of the way, you're trying to outguess things that are coming. And, Paul will probably talk about this more for me, but the Fed's driving things at us so fast or making promises without really telling us what's going to happen. And behind that, we're trying to figure out how we're getting businesses back open, how we're getting kids back into school, how we're getting families. And, I was taking calls on a regular basis about unemployment benefits, housing. The renting situation is absolutely atrocious across the state. Frankly, we have people that need to get out of these renting situations because they're killing the landlords and moving people through. And we have a housing stock that's bunched up, and we have an employment issue where we can't get enough people into jobs to get things going. And then we bunched up the supply chain. With the COVID, and so now we have all of these products that are waiting to come into the country, and they're going to hit our economy. It is a situation unlike anything I've ever seen, and I will end my comments with this as we try to navigate through this. Whatever happened now and the legislation that we pass in the budget, we are going to have to pay for that in 2 to 4 years. It's coming back. You can't pass a budget this large with this much money and the revenue not to cover it without some sincere ramifications in 2 to 4 years. I don't know what those will be, but that exists. When you look it out and you start to run the numbers out, the uncertainty that we face today could become exponential in the next 2 to 4 years. So that's what I would see now. So my comments.
Good morning. No, I couldn't agree more with that assessment. Extremely difficult. We looked at the numbers near the end, and through the 3 stimulus bills that came from Trump, and 1 from Trump, 2 from Biden, over $18 billion of federal money, extra federal money, came into Minnesota. Some of it went to the state, but some of it went directly to local schools, local governments, nonprofits, and it was hard to figure out where in the world's all this money coming from. And then so, like Representative Kresha said, as far as doing a budget, trying not to make new spending commitments that would require us to pay for them in the future. That was extremely difficult to do because Ron is right. We're looking to the future and saying the federal money's not going to be there, And so now how do we pay for the things that we're talking about now? And so that without a doubt is a difficulty. Every state did it different. Wisconsin, South Dakota, places like that, they didn't accept some of the extra unemployment that encouraged people to go back to work. And so they have a much better unemployment rate than we do. There were just decisions that we had to make within the parameters that we had. Our governor had emergency powers for over a year and a half. Very, very frustrating for me personally. We ended emergency powers the night before last. We ended the governor's emergency powers, and the House Democrats agreed with us. So it was kind of like, it's over. So that to me is the light at the end of the tunnel when we can get back to normal. But then as we navigated through this particular budget, they still wanted a tax increase. All that money coming in, they still wanted a tax increase. We ended up with $1 billion of tax decrease. Anybody that got PPP, that was the small businesses that got the Paycheck Protection Program, virtually every state didn't tax it, but our state wanted to tax that benefit. The federal government didn't tax it. That got done, and that was about 200,000 businesses. And then anybody that got the COVID unemployment benefits, which was about 500,000 people, that also is in that bill where that's not taxed as well. And so I was glad we did that. I didn't feel like we should have had to fight so hard to get that, but that was important. We did reinsurance for a 5th year. Anybody that is buying their own health insurance out on the market, that's what we used to keep the rates down, and it's how we made sure that there were enough other insurance companies in the market so everybody would have insurance. That we solved it 5 years ago, but we got the 5th year this year. And so on education, anybody that's in the public school system should be thrilled. It was the largest per pupil funding formula in 15 years, 2.5 and 2. Our chair said, look, I don't want to do all these extra little programs. I want to put it all on the formula so that all of the schools benefit. Most of the House Democrats drove everything to Minneapolis and St. Paul. I think you'd agree with that. And so we tried to get it more broader so it went out everywhere. And so I think that was a good thing. We really wanted education savings accounts or more options for parents and their children and what they would choose. We did not get that. I think that was a big deal. Now you have a growing number of communities of color in Minneapolis and St. Paul that are now demanding that too. And so I think that will happen eventually. It didn't happen now. We also got a 2-year delay on the social studies standards, which we thought was really important. Anybody that's been following that at all, the critical race theory, on the history standards saying you don't have to talk about George Washington, World War I, World War II, the Holocaust, we said, hey, we want to wait. So they will not be implemented for at least 2 years so that we can take another look at it, because we just think that's, I love our country, I love our founding. We were not perfect, but the laws that we put in place blessed a whole country. Any person, no matter who they were, had an incredible opportunity, and I'm going to fight to keep that. Some people want to change it. So one of the big battles was the public safety bill. It's amazing how many people on the other side of the aisle either want to dismantle the police, defund the police, or don't appreciate the police. It is amazing to me. And so we had this bill that has to fund the courts, has to fund the corrections, has to fund police, and they had all of these provisions. Some of them we took. We said, okay, that's a reasonable reform, that we should do that. We counseled with the police groups, but some of them were just, they're going to drive more and more police out of what they do. And so we fought for that. House Republicans fought for that. In the end, I think the bill was good. But so a lot of battles, more difficult this year than any other budget I've ever done. I've been responsible for 3 2-year budgets where I'm the final guy in the room, and it was like, this was just really, really hard. I don't know if it was just COVID and people were mad, all the federal money and what to do with it, or just that we're so divided. But in the end, I think the end product was reasonable. Both sides would probably say we can live with it. So how's that?
Wonderful. Due to COVID, the Chamber was not able to do the wrap-up session for 2020, and we did not do a pre-legislative session for 21. So it's so great to be back in the room and to see people face-to-face again. At this time, we would start taking questions from the audience. We do want to stress, though, that this is state government issues. If you have an issue with the city or the county or something on a national level, we really can't address that. We can't fix that problem for you. So your comments and concerns should be addressing state government. So at this time, we would welcome anyone to the podium. And remember to please state your name for us.
Hi, I'm Mary Warner, Executive Director of the Morrison County Historical Society, and I really just want to start with a thank you to both of you for helping to sponsor our bonding bill for the Weyerhaeuser Museum and for giving me the opportunity to testify to the Capital Investment Committee. We really appreciate it, so thank you.
Yeah, just quickly, you're on your way. We'll see where we go. You know, you're in a better position with funding than many people. So congratulations with all your work. We'll see what happens, but the bonding discussions will start probably in earnest, I'd say in the 6 to 8 months. So it's always better to be there as a placeholder than where a lot of people are at. So good luck.
Hey, good morning. I'm Kathy Lang, Executive Director of the Habitat for Humanity of Morrison County. Thank you both for meeting in person today. We've met on Zoom a few times, and I know, Ron, you and I have had a lot of conversations about Habitat for Humanity, and if anyone saw the Star Tribune article in Sunday's paper, it very much the AP wrote about the challenges Habitat Humanities are having in Morrison County that affects us as well. We build affordable housing for families that deserve it, that normally wouldn't have an opportunity to own a home. And so this year, a home, our construction manager stated that what cost $100 a square foot last year will cost $170 a square foot. So we need to look for innovative funding ways to maintain Habitat's mission of building homes and affordable housing for our families. There is 41% of our families in Morrison County are cost-burdened households. We don't want to increase our homeless population here. We are, with Oasis Central Minnesota, we are trying to do our best to decrease and provide homes for those as well. But getting back to Habitat, we are not a handout, we are a helping hand. So last year, our homes in 2020 was $150,000. So with another increase in lumber costs, we're looking at not being able to provide an affordable home. So anything you can do for housing, and I know, Ron, you and I have had conversations, thank you for that and your passion for that. And I know, Senator Gazelka, you are concerned about this as well. So anything you can do to help the nonprofits, it's an overall issue with all habitats, and we just need to make sure we maintain that mission. So thank you.
Yeah, and Kathy, check the housing bill that passed. It wasn't a great bill. It ended the eviction moratorium, but not really. We wanted to do it differently. But I do believe there's money in there for single-family dwellings. Senator Draheim really fought to make sure some of the money went to actually people, and he mentioned Habitat Humanity by name. So try to follow up on that and just see where that's at. I did volunteer at Habitat for Humanity like 2 decades ago, because I'm not very good at, a hammer and a nail, but it was so good.
Okay, I will do that. Thank you.
Next question or comment?
I'm Walter Eden from Uppsala, and I'm a member of our local Lions Club, and our gambling manager brought up the fact that the Indians were going to try and take away part of this, not the pull tab, but electronic gambling there. Thank you. And I was wondering how that turned out, because that's the major funding for our Lions Club, and we were able to donate $5,000 for the turnout gear for our local fire department on Monday evening, and plus some other things. So it's major money for all these nonprofit organizations that donate stuff back locally. So if you could tell us how it turned out, appreciate it.
Thanks, Walter. Well, that did not make it through. And I think it'll line up to be a fight again. The background on that, I mean, first of all, here's the deal. I mean, when we start to, the local organizations do a great job. The charitable gambling, your missions are fantastic. The problem is we still are dependent on money that we're pulling out of gambling funds. We're still, we're taking and trying to do the best we can with gambling proceeds. And we have the tribe, and this all goes back to the stadium deal. We have the tribes that believe that gambling money should go to them. They believe that they're the gambling industry. So we have that fight, and that's not going to change. That I don't know what's going to happen. And then the other side of this is the state taxes that very heavily, as you know. So we have everybody taking a cut of this, and what we're doing is we're reducing the dollars that are ending up in the communities. I won't support that. I won't support more dollars leaving our charities and heading to whether it's the tribes or the state. So we got to find a way to do that. I can just tell you it's going to be a very big issue, especially with the lieutenant governor right now and many of the promises they've made to the tribes. So what I would say to gambling, charitable gambling and organizations, be very vigilant. We'll do the best we can. I can tell you that's not something I would go down there and support a change of, but this is going to take some grassroots efforts. It's going to take some people speaking up and letting the governor know, and the lieutenant governor and the tribes that the only workable solution is if we can reduce the charitable gambling tax so that there's no hit to the communities. And then the last thing I'll add is the other thing that was really hard about this, of course, was some of the revenues in this is what kept many of our businesses going through COVID. I mean, when they were hit and the governor shut them down, this was one of the only things that kept their lights on. And so, yeah, it's been a 1-2 punch for them. So that's where I'm at on it. I won't probably change my position on that.
Walter, I will tell you, the governor was pushing for that. It made it through the Democrat-controlled House. We stopped it in the Senate. And Ron's absolutely right. We're looking for a solution. I always look for a win-win. I will tell you that I was there in 11 and 12, right in there when the electronic pull tabs went through. And I would say the machines are farther than what we agreed to then. And so if the tribes took it to court, they might win on that. But I'd like to find a solution. And because it's all tied to the Viking Stadium, if we refinance the Viking Stadium, like next year or the year after, right in there, it saves us like $6 million a year. We're trying to explore how do we make sure that, like Ron said, we lower the tax on the charitable gaming so that the money coming in, it's not a loss for them, and try to work with the tribes to figure out where the machines should be. And it's really, really tricky, but we stopped it in the Senate because of people like you, bar owners, spoke up and just said, hey, this is not fair to us. And so, the governor made a promise. We stopped that. We're looking for a solution.
Good morning. Sheila Watercott from Little Falls Schools, and I help coordinate our drug prevention program for youth. And as both of you know, prior to COVID, our communities were facing a lot of challenges in respect to substance use, mental health, when it came to our youth and our families. And now after COVID, those challenges and barriers have just increased. And so just curious to hear from both of you what you feel are the priorities going forward so that we can continue to provide more support for youth and families that are struggling with mental health and substance use, which creates a barrier for education. Funding is great, but some of those families need more than just that. They need some more support. Thank you.
Your job's not going to get any easier. And I don't say that lightly. I mean, we have a situation in front of us where you have more families that have gone into isolation, depression. We've seen breakdowns in the family because of COVID, less church attendance. I mean, all of the things that hold us up in the pillars are gone, and the government can't solve those problems. And people are, continually I hear the government programs. The reality is those government programs will never solve those issues. And until we build our communities back up and start to open some things, that's just going to be really hard. I don't know what we're going to see coming out of education. And no fault of what the schools did, but these kids are coming through situations. I look at my daughter, who was a senior last year, her first year freshman. Those kids will become big studies down the road. Because what we saw happen to that senior class and then their freshman year, these kids are more disconnected. Think about what they lost. They lost one of the most important years of closure for high school, of communities. And then they went into a college where your biggest job your freshman year is to build relationships with the people that are going to be there for the rest of your lives. And that was taken away from them. And these kids are lost. They don't really know. It's like they're fumbling around in the dark with a blindfold on. That's how lost that generation is. So I don't know what it's going to look like, but what you're starting to see now is, I think, just the front end of that. So I don't know what the solution is. It's going to be really, really challenging, and we're going to have to figure out a way as a community to pick up these pieces.
The reason why I let him answer first is because it's like, what's the answer, to be honest? And it was probably one of the areas I was most frustrated with the governor in he choosing to close the public school system, working with the teachers union. I know a lot of teachers that still wanted to teach, but it wasn't, the parochial schools stayed open, and there was no harm to the kids. I mean, there was some risk to the teachers, especially if you were an older teacher, and so I think we could have figured that out. But by closing the schools, unlike other states, unlike other countries, all of this mental health stuff happened. I mean, without a doubt, what Ron's talking about, you miss your prom, you miss your graduation, you don't get to play in sports. When you finally get to play in sports, they're forcing you to wear a mask that makes no sense to the science. It wasn't just the kids, but that's where we're going to see it most. In fact, on the education thing, they wanted to push off and not measure any of the standards this year. I'm thinking, no way. We absolutely need to measure the standards this year because we hurt the kids. Frankly, it's because I'm part of government, but I point to our governor because not every state did it. And as a result of that, locking down everybody versus seniors, which we knew early was the main area of the risk. Over 70 was where the risk was. And it wasn't just our state, and we're all trying to figure it out, but this big experiments globally on a pandemic and locking everybody down and shutting everything down, I don't think it's been good for us at all. Was there a risk? Absolutely. Was the virus serious? You bet it was. But Wisconsin, for example, their courts said the governor couldn't shut everything down. And so they had to live and manage and just be responsible for their lives. But there was no mandated mask mandate. They didn't shut down the businesses. And you look at the difference between the states and the number of deaths, and by population, it's virtually the same. So this big experiment we did with just locking everything down really hurt the kids, but I think it's what made everybody so angry. The riots were out of control. And so, I don't know, we're going to look back at this and say, what in the world did we do? But not every state did it the same.
Morning, gentlemen. Greg Zelka, Mayor of Little Falls. First of all, I want to thank you all for being so very accessible. If I call, if I text, I email, I always get a prompt response, and to me that's very important because of your positions. I just want to reiterate a couple things that the local option sales tax, you were both supportive of that for us, and also the grade separation, the railroad tracks on the bridge. Ironically, this morning, Council Member Lumberg had a video that she showed me that she took on the bridge of emergency vehicles sitting next to her with the lights flashing, and they're all waiting for the bridge. And 5 minutes can be something that turns it into catastrophic. We've also been meeting with Congressman Stauber, and he's been very supportive of our idea of putting a bridge over the railroad tracks. So hopefully we can see some movement in that direction because we see that as very important to our community. Thank you both for all the work you do. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, we had it once. So the local option sales tax, as you know, is in, so that'll fall on the community to whatever. And not sure what's going to happen, you know, funding for the grade separation. But my other solution is I'm just going to move all of the east side to the west side, and we're going to boom over there. And I mean, we have lots of property. We have, you know, redistricting would be great.
Greg, I mean, I was telling Ron, we had it once. I can't remember. I think the governor vetoed the bill,
Yeah,
not this one, a prior one, but next year there may be a bonding bill this year. If there is, I don't think there'll be many named, if any, named projects. It'll just be big infrastructure, water, roads, you know, just that way. And then I expect a bigger bill next year. But one of these years, the federal government is actually going to do a big infrastructure bill. So being connected to Stauber right now, I think, is really good because that could be an easier way to get it done too. So we'll see. Don't ever give up.
Hi, I'm Ann Krisnick. I'm Executive Director of the Joint Religious Legislative Coalition, so speaking more from a statewide perspective for the JRLC. So first, I just want to thank you for your work in an incredibly complicated time. But I really want to share that across the state in our faith communities, we see Minnesotans that are really struggling, and we are so grateful that as you put your budget bills together, you really recognize that. So looking at bonding for affordable housing, a significant increase in funding for our emergency shelter system, MFIP, child care, stopping the practice of suspending someone's license when they're unable to pay a parking ticket so they can continue to work. So just thank you. Those aren't always the things that are at the top of people's lists, and you've made a really significant difference to those low and moderate income Minnesotans. So thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for being here. I'm Sister Carol Schmidt, a Franciscan from right down the road here, and I thank you for being here this morning. And we have mentioned the COVID and how disruptive that has been for us. We still cannot open our building. And what you failed to mention, you were not happy with the governor who said close down, but I did not hear you say get out and get vaccinated. We need to hear that. And if everybody, we got vaccinated in January. If everybody who could, by their age or whatever, be vaccinated the minute possible, we would be in a very different position right now. And that was really disappointing to us, and it still is. Thank you.
Yeah, I had COVID, worked through it. I've been vaccinated, so I think it's a personal choice whether somebody does or not. Most people did. I strongly encourage people over 70. That was the vast number of people that passed away from the virus. People under 16, it's virtually zero people have died from the virus. And so, but you know, the fact that we shut everything down is where I just disagree with people. I'm acknowledging and always acknowledge that it was a very, very serious virus. And as a sister, you should probably know that the governor also tried to shut down the churches. And in fact, at one point, he let bars be open with 50 people, and at the exact same time, a church could only have 10 and don't sing. And I mean, these were rules that he set up that I think were wrong. And eventually, I helped organize the Catholic Church with some big Protestant churches, Catholic all the way up to the Archbishop, to say, Governor, you cannot keep people away from worship, that it's a central thing of what we do. And as a result, the governor allowed churches then to be open at 250. Well, surprise, surprise, they found out that that's not where there was any spread. It didn't come, there was no data that ever proved that. And so it's been difficult to make the choices in what we do and how we do it. I tell people I got vaccinated, but there are some people that do not want to be vaccinated, and I respect their right to decide that. Most people have, and like I said, as the numbers of people over 70 got vaccinated, the deaths dropped dramatically down. The governor in the early times said if we quarantine everybody, lock everything down, that hopefully only 50,000 people will die. Well, I saw the same data, looking at the same data at the same time. I said, I think we'll have about 5,000. Still a lot of people. Still, we got to be careful. This is a big deal. Well, as of today, the rolling number, unlike the flu where we started every year, we start over every year, the rolling number on this death is a little over 7,000. So he made all the decisions on 50,000 people dying when the science was not showing that. And as a result, we did all of these other extreme measures, and that's where I'm just frustrated. And we'll look back. I think once the emotion subsides from this, and we'll look back and say, was it beneficial to close the schools and keep kids out when we knew that no kids were dying from this? You know, was it beneficial to shut down all of these businesses and just let the big box stores do it, and all the little mom and pop businesses that I represent had to be closed? I mean, that's what we're going to look back and see, but I don't think the decisions were good. Last thing I'll say is every state wanted their governor to succeed. I wanted our governor to succeed. In the first month, we gave him $500 million for vaccinations, for testing, for equipment for people. But the farther we went down this path where he got to choose all of these things by himself, the more I disagreed. And I also could see what other states were doing. So, South Dakota they trusted the people to make the right decisions. In the Senate, that was the only place where I had authority, where the governor didn't have the authority. And I told our team, I strongly recommend you wear a mask, but it's not required. Guess what? Almost everybody wore a mask. You know, so that's the difference between trusting the people and asking them to make good decisions versus making people do something against their will.
So I'll just add briefly to that. So, and thank you, sister, for coming up. No, I can't come out and tell you to get vaccinated or not to get vaccinated. It's not my job. I don't have enough knowledge of anybody's personal health. And so for me as a government official or an elected official to come out and say that, I'm going to get it wrong. The reality is people have to make personal decisions, and they're going to have to work through those. My biggest fear on this is there's a seriousness that swept the globe in COVID. There's no question about that. But there's a lot we don't know yet. We don't know how this triggered comorbidities. We don't know how this triggered a lot of the deaths that came up. In fact, I think you're going to find lots of studies on what was actually COVID-related deaths versus what were other things, and how were these put together. What I do know is this. There were individuals, agencies, and government officials that use this as an opportunity to expand their powers in ways that they've been wanting to do for years. I watched it, I saw it happen, and I don't think that's good for communities. I think that's really difficult. And we have to watch out when the government has an opportunity to do something, it will take that. And whether we like it or not, we have to remember as individual communities and individual people with individual rights and responsibilities. And I get it. Listen, this was a really hard time. I've been through hard times with companies. I've been through hard times when my sister died of cancer. And there was no government solution that was going to change what she was about to go through. We have to be careful of the problems and the solutions we put in place, because I will tell you, they will get used and expanded, and we will wish things had gone differently. It's just the way it works. I can't explain it to you any other differently, but watch as we see programs expand. Watch, you have a government now that is going to grow many, many, many times because they can. And I just think we have to be very, very careful of that. Unintended consequences are one of the worst things that we try to manage, and it's all done with the best of intentions. So that's where I'm at on that.
Roman Watuki. My interest is in a bill that's, we're going to have a public infrastructure bill coming out of the feds. And how that's going to affect our local community is going to be a real problem. It's something that's come up. I'm talking about townships. None of that money ever seems to funnel back to a township or small unit of government. Take, for instance, our township last year raised their levy 70%, just to cover some flood costs. And you take a look now with the large businesses that are coming into our township and a lot of other townships with the large-scale feedlots, they're literally tearing up 10 to 20 miles of our road with their heavy equipment. It'll do their large barging operation. What I've encouraged you, and I know Paul will be coming before the next legislative session if that bill comes through, you should put some effort in there to help fund the townships with some of their road profit, low taxes. All we do is provide roads, basically. And right now, if you pay $100 in township taxes today, last year, next year, it's going to be $175, and the year after that. I think some of that money should funnel down more to help out our real small units of government also. And I think it's a problem. You know, due to large farming is a big industry. I'm not running down farming. But, you know, they're literally tearing up our roads. If we go to rebuild it, and a lot of it goes through wetland, we got to buy the wetland back at 2 to 1. You know what the cost of wetland to buy back is? It's expensive. Last I heard many years ago was $50, I don't know if it's $50 a square foot or whatever it was. It was expensive. And that's all I want to comment on. I think you should really try and get some of that money funneled to townships, and they have them projects, big projects, like a big dairy operation comes in. County recommends that we put in a 9-ton road. You know what a 9-ton road costs to be put in? Big bucks. And the last question I got, did PCR pass this year, get funded?
I'm sure it did.
Yeah.
I'm sure it did.
Okay, that's
Roman, first of all, good to see you again, by the way. But in our, Senator Newman is the chair of our Transportation Committee, and he is always looking to get money down to towns under 5,000 and townships. And to be honest, I just lost track of exactly what happened in that area, but I wrote it down. I'll see if I can figure it out. But I want you to know that that is his priority. Our priority is look at towns under 5,000. Same thing with bridges. A lot of times we put money in for bridges. He keeps pushing it to saying the bridge has to be valued under 10,000 or whatever, because sometimes you set up this bridge fund and they take it all for one big bridge somewhere else. And we know we can do a lot of work on a lot of little bridges if we can put limits on it. So it is on our radar. I just don't remember what the final product was.
And the last thing I'll say, so Roman, thank you for that. One of the things that we did see, that I saw with the effects of the last session in the House, we were locked down, and here nor there it happened. But one of the unintended consequences of that was I didn't get access to people. Normally the townships are in my office, we're talking, and so a lot of these groups that I normally am able to pay attention to their issues were muted because we weren't talking to them. I mean, we would have the township breakfast. When you're down there, a lot of people almost are apologetically that they're down there. We're so busy. I will tell you that's our biggest asset. When I have people coming in and out of my doors down there, and I'm going 8 hours of meetings, it's keeping me abreast of those things that are going. The township issue that hopefully we can get back on top of that, it was muted. It was like pushed way, way down because of so many other things we were dealing with. So hopefully that will change.
Okay. Additional questions? We have Senator Gazelka for just a few more minutes.
Morning, Deb. Morning, gentlemen. My name is Bill Osberg. I'm the executive director of nothing.
That means Bill's unemployed looking for a job.
No, Kathy put me to work. The stimulus money you were speaking of earlier, is there any way that that money could be just, I don't know, I'll use the term set aside and not put into a budget or not put into use can be used in a reserve position? That's the only question I would have.
So I didn't see the final numbers because a lot of little things got in at the end, but I believe we set aside $1 billion, and that can be used over the next 3 years. I'd like not to use it next year, but there's going to be all kinds of appetite for people for their projects. In addition to that, there's revenue numbers that just showed another like $1.4 billion that they didn't think was coming in, and that's because we had all this federal stimulus that people were spending, you know, and because I am nervous about maybe next year, but for sure the year after. And so, and the other thing we're trying to do is fill up the reserves to the top. The legislation that we passed, money's going to go into the reserves because I do think that's prudent. So I'll say Bill said so.
Yeah, right. Well, I lied. I do have another question. There's still possibly some money that the federal government has set aside on the stimulus. I don't, there again, using that same word. Is there more money coming into the states that we're not aware of?
Yeah, there might be. I mean, I wasn't aware it was $18 billion until about 4 weeks ago. So, I mean, it's nothing's free. I mean, if they're just printing that money and sending it out, eventually you got to pay for it.
Yeah, and you know, one of the things, this is a serious issue because this is so big, it's so massive, and so much is coming. And I've heard from other states, I've heard from other agency leaders, and this is what the agency leaders will tell you is, we have so much money coming, we have so much to spend in such a short period of time, we're going to get it wrong. Because what's going to happen is things are going to go out the door, and I mean, those of you that are familiar with government spending and how this happens, you have to account for it, it has to happen, and you have to put the reports out. Well, a lot of them are just going to find programs to put money out there. And that's where we're going to look back and go, okay, what happened? Why did this go out the door? And a lot of the answer is going to be because agency leaders are going to say, I was told I had to spend that money. That will be one of the biggest things that we're going to have to unwind because there's so much.
All right.
Good morning, Senator and Congressman and Mayor. Welcome back to the representative. Welcome back to the reddest county in the state. Thank you all for what you've done to push back on the CRT and also the school voucher program. Disclaimer, I am a Florida resident. My husband and I both, between us, have over 60 years, retired from the military. But we are property owners here in Little Falls, so we do have a little dog in the fight. What is the state of Minnesota doing to push back on the funding that's keeping people from going back to work? First question. And second question, are we doing anything to assist our folks on the southern border with the illegal immigration?
And could you share your name first, please?
Yes, ma'am. Heidi Eisted.
So on the southern border, nothing. Only the governor could make that decision. South Dakota sent 50 people. Yeah, so nothing there. What was the first part again?
What are we doing to push back on the funding from the federal government that's keeping people from going back to work?
So again, some states said, we don't think it's in the best interest of our state to receive that money because it's encouraging people not to work. And not everybody, but I'm just saying the extra benefits have made it difficult for employers to hire people because it's better for them not to work. And so our governor has continued to accept that. I have brought that to him, that look, we have a workforce shortage. We got to get people out there. And so it's just a stalemate. I mean, the philosophies are different between the two parties on that. And so there's nothing we can do about that. Those are governor decisions. So just thank you to you, sir, you said. Thank you for doing that. Between the military and the police, police right now in particular, I cannot believe especially down in Minneapolis and St. Paul, how polarized this has become. When wanting public safety and wanting to appreciate the police and the military is really, really important. I'll just give you one example. We passed a bill, it's called Matson Strong. Eric Matson, he was a police officer in Waseca, He was shot in the head by a criminal, and he survived. His wife, a woman of prayer, he's now rehabilitating, and they gave him the Minnesota Police Officer of the Year award. And we brought him to the Capitol, and we honored him. It was either yesterday or the day before. It's so a blur, I can't remember which day is what anymore, but 2 days ago. But I mean, it was, and so what we did is there's a pin. It's the flag with the blue line, just a simple little pin. And many of us wore this pin. We were honoring this man that stood in harm's way. His family's forever changed, and we honored him. But I was shocked that the other side said, we think, we want you to remove that lapel pin because it's advocating for an issue, and we think that's wrong. And we could not believe it, because people wear lapel pins on the Senate floor for all kinds of things, for different bills that come up. But because all of us, Republicans and a few Democrats, had the pin, they were offended. And I'm thinking, we have to do better at this. And so there's just some major issues right now that somehow we have to come back together. There, like the city of Minneapolis, every city council member wanted to defund the police, literally defund the police. Well, then they realized when crime went up sky high, I mean sky high, that suddenly, well, maybe the police, maybe we need to not quite defund them, but they don't appreciate them. And so it's this epic struggle right now that I've never, ever seen. I've never seen it like this. I'm 61 years old. I've never seen this, these core values that we have being thrown out or not valued. And so we got to figure out both sides how to kind of say, you know, these things we got to fight for. There are special interest groups that they want to go different directions. We all have to stand up and say, no, we love America. We love the things we've been founded on. We're not afraid to say we had flaws and we changed from them, but we have a great nation.
Thank you, sir.
I'm going to take off, but yes. If I'm cranky, I can't even tell.
You are.
And I got to bed at 4 a.m. a second night in a row, and I thought, oh, I got to get up to this thing. So I drove up this morning. Joyce and Mandy Heffron said, I said, bring me a cup of coffee because I'm getting there right at 9 o'clock. So I apologize because I don't know what I have no idea if I'm totally coherent. But anyway, thank you all, and thanks, Ron, for your service.
And I'll keep going.
Yeah, thanks.
I'll be around.
Yeah,
thanks, Paul.
So thank you, Representative Kresha. We'll continue with questions from our audience. And thank you, Paul. Thank you, Paul.
Drive safely.
Do we
like
have
high school all over again?
yeah.
I suddenly don't have a date, and I'm left with nothing to do.
Any other comments or questions from our audience today? I keep getting confused because the Minnesota Chamber is the lobbying arm for the smaller chambers across the state, and we already started our 22 platform. So when I was struggling with what date I was dealing with at the introduction, it's because I'm already moved into 22 on you. Minnesota Chamber does a lot of things for our small businesses. Property tax relief is a big one, employee benefits, unfunded mandates that they hope that small businesses are able to do. One thing that the Minnesota Chamber has been able to come forward with is some benefits that will be rolling out in the coming months that small businesses will be able to get dental insurance and life insurance and disability insurance. The one that they are having so much trouble with is health insurance. If we would be able to have a statewide buying pool for our small businesses to be able to get health insurance, that would be absolutely huge. This is about 3 years in the works, but we think we're getting close to having that benefit for our small businesses. Child care, lack of safe child care, housing, it's all the same things that we heard today is what the Minnesota Chamber is lobbying for our business community. And the Minnesota Chamber is pretty large down at the Capitol. They're usually in the top 3 of the lobbying groups that are there working on behalf of all businesses in Minnesota. Years when there's a rate increase for utility companies, and I think the balance of power switches a little bit with our lobbying groups that Xcel Energy or someone is back at the Capitol hot and heavy. We haven't had one of those for a couple years, so we do appreciate the Minnesota Chamber. So if you have questions that you still want to ask Paul or Ron, please work through their people to get them to you. If you have other concerns as a business owner that you think the Minnesota Chamber can help you with, we would be more than happy to help facilitate getting that in front of that group of people. When I came about 16, 17 years ago, the ethanol plant was trying to get the EPA to sign off on a piece of paper, and they were in month 18 of working with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency to get that piece of paper signed off so they could move ahead. When we're competing against North and South Dakota, where they have a 90-day review period for Pollution Control Agency sign off, it's very hard to attract business to come to Minnesota and work when there's too many stumbling blocks in front of us. So those are the types of things that the Minnesota Chamber really works on behalf of all of us. So, Ron, do you have any closing statements you'd like to make?
I'll finish up with what you said in the chamber. One of the things that I see for the coming years is it's going to be, how does our economy start back up? Right now you're hearing the economy is doing great, you're seeing all this happening. The reality is there's a lot of money moving through the system is coming through the government. The problem is the only way that we start to sustain ourselves is that money has to move through people as they get a job or they start a business, and it starts to move through their the community economy, and that's not happening right now. I mean, we're seeing things start up, but like I said, a lot of this is moving through the government. And the thing that I think we're going to have to look out for is workforce development as far as workforce attraction. Towns like Little Falls will probably be okay because we have enough of a base and people do move back here. But when you start to get below 5,000, those towns are going to dry up. People just aren't moving back, and there's just not enough people. I mean, we have a people problem. The other thing that is a really big concern for me is if you look at what jobs we're losing and what we're going to lose over the next 5 years. If you don't have an education or you don't have a skill, I mean, just look right now. Go to McDonald's. If you go to McDonald's right now, they want you to order with an app. Everybody's moving to a technology and they're reducing jobs. You're going to see that more and more and more. And there's a whole group of people that, based on their skill set, are not going to find work that's going to sustain their lifestyle. That's going to be a problem, and I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen with that group of people in our economy. And the government will dry up. The money is, I'm just going to tell you, that money is going to be gone. I know the question was, what are we doing to stop it? The bank account's going to go to zero. And when it goes to zero, there's nothing we can do. And so you're going to be left with a whole group of people that may not have the skills, may not be able to find work. We don't know where they're going to go. And there will be no resources for them. So that worries me more than anything that we're faced with right now. Businesses, frankly, we need to see some businesses start up. We need to see people get into jobs and start to build their families. The biggest indicator that I look at every year is what's Christmas like. How was Christmas for the families? If you had a good Christmas, you have kids, grandkids, and you're able to have some presents and everyone felt good about the year, the economy is going to be fine. When we go into the years where Christmas starts to dry up, I know we're in for a tough year. And I'm waiting to see that Christmas come. Hopefully we won't see it.
Okay. Well, great. We will close up our session today. Thank you to Mark from Great River Television for filming and rebroadcasting this for us. Watch Channel 180 for when this would be, if you are in Little Falls anyway. And thank you to Representative Ron Kresha and Senator Paul Gazelka for being with us, and to our audience that came out today. It's just so nice to be in a room with people again. So thank you for being here, and if the Chamber can help you in any way, give us a call. Thank you.